What does Exit 8 hide from the player off camera? Hi everyone and welcome back. In this one I'll be doing the usual, showing you some out of bounds secrets as well as behind the scenes footage of how the game works, including a few of the anomalies which you may be curious to see. First of all, if you are interested in out of bounds secrets and if you're new to the channel, please feel free to check out some of my other videos, you may enjoy them. I've covered lots of games now from old to new, including various Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty titles. That said, let's get on with this one. For those who don't already know about Exit 8, it's an indie psychological horror game on Steam where players find themselves stuck in a constant loop in an underground passageway. If you fancy checking it out before watching this, as of course there will be spoilers, I'll leave a link in the description so you can take a look. If you're still with me, just a quick run through of the basics so you understand what I'm talking about in the video. We start at exit 0 and begin walking through the passageway. If you notice an anomaly, you turn back the opposite way. If there isn't one, you continue forward. The problem being, some are far more obvious than others. The idea being, if you're observant and make the correct decisions, you'll find your way to exit 8. How does it all work? I'm gonna try to explain. Though first of all, it's probably a good idea to take a look at the passageway from the outside. So, this is the whole passageway as the game begins. Now, as we move one way or the other, we start to hit trigger points. And as we hit these trigger points, the next part of the passageway sections begin to load. And as they do, depending on the direction, the previous parts disappear. So there's never too many sections loaded at once. Makes sense. However, there are exceptions to this, especially as we often have to turn around and go back the way we came. Say for example, I was to run in the opposite direction at exit 0, I'd find that the corridor is still in the reversed state. Now, this is where the trigger points play a large part, and I'll show you an example of them working here. In the top right corner is a feed of a couple of scripts that I have running. These tell me if there is an anomaly in the corridor and also what exit number we've reached, though what's more important is looking when these numbers change, which indicates when a trigger has been hit. And you'll probably notice it's just set back enough to stop the player from being able to see down the corridor. If the player does spot the anomaly and turns around, the existing corridor we walked through previously simply flips its assets to the appropriate layout. Now that's a brief explanation of how the passageways work. What about the anomalies? Well, we're going to take a look at a few of the ones which I think are probably more questionable to how they work, such as the red water and the twins appearing. But first, just a quick look at some of the others that you may have been curious to see. Alright, let's take a look at the water anomaly now, and I'm guessing this may be a cool little reference to one of my favourite films, The Shining, and the blood waterfall scene. Notice where the water begins to flow from. It's practically the same point as the trigger that we mentioned earlier. Also, if you decide to follow the water back down the shorter corridor once it's come to a stop, you can see what happens to it. As for the unnamed man who walks the passageway, to be honest there's very little we haven't seen before in other videos. He has the usual character model features. You can also see here how his chest only goes part way down behind his clothing, and it's the same with his hands and feet. There really is only the minimum of what needs to be added. You may also notice he walks slightly off the ground, which is also fairly common as the player can never really get so low down to see the gap, and this ensures that he doesn't somehow clip through the floor. However, he does have an anomaly which makes it look as though parts of his face are missing. It seems to be a bubble-like effect that wraps around his face. It's very cool, and I'm not entirely sure how it works. Maybe a developer who uses Unreal Engine can give us some more information about this effect in the comments. The unnamed man isn't the only character in the game. Every once in a while, these two twins will appear in the corridor and stop us in our tracks. But where did they come from? Well, in the bottom left corner, you can just about see them stored out of bounds way below the map, and as we hit the trigger point, they teleport into position. Though they aren't the only assets stored out here. If we fly down, we can find a jumble of characters stored out of bounds, including the taller version of the man, and the version with the bubble effect around his head. Travelling even further out into the endless void, we can also find the section of map that is Exit 8, which kinda brings me nicely towards the end of the video, though there is one difference to be noted between the anomaly, Exit 0, and Exit 8, which is Exit 0 being its positioned at the end of the long corridor keeps the smaller corridor attached rather than it disappearing, albeit it's now hidden behind a fake wall, whereas Exit 8 appears on the shorter corridor where the exit number sign usually is, therefore there is no hidden corridor. I guess the last thing to do will be to take a quick look at what's at the top of the steps of Exit 8, as you don't normally reach the top and it's very bright and hard to see. Once you can see, it turns out to be very simple, nothing too elaborate, but why make something elaborate when there doesn't need to be? What we can find not only does the job, but it works pretty well. Alright, that is it for this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, then please subscribe. Again, maybe check out some of my other content. I'd really appreciate the support. Feel free to come and join me and chat on Discord or my other social media platforms. And as always, when I use some of his tools, huge thank you to Franz Bomer for his work. It really makes my life so much easier making these videos. Links can be found in the description to his site. Until the next one, take care.